Let's kick off this explainer. If you've ever built a CAPTCHA solver using Celery and Redis, you know it usually starts out looking deceptively simple. You write a quick local script, and boom, it works perfectly. But taking that pristine code and throwing it into an unattended production environment, yeah, that is a completely different beast.
In your local testing, everything's absolutely perfect, right? A worker gets a task, the request goes out, a token comes back, and your workflow just keeps on moving. But if you deploy that exact same code into a real Redis-backed queue, or maybe a cron job, total chaos usually ensues. The token gets solved, sure, but the target site rejects it. Your worker gets confused, starts retrying endlessly, and before you know it, your Redis instance is literally overflowing with noisy, failed tasks.
So how do we fix this? Here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, the production reality check. 2, defining your scope and boundaries. 3, managing sessions and polling. 4, controlling those retries and logs. And finally, number 5, measuring true workflow success.
Let's dive right into Section 1, the production reality check.
Before we write a single line of code, we really need to rethink what success actually means here. We're talking workflow success versus solver success. Look, it's incredibly common to stare at your dashboard, see a CAPTCHA solved message, and think you're done. But if the downstream protected workflow, like an actual form submission or a login attempt, still fails, then capturing that token absolutely does not matter. The token is not the finish line, downstream acceptance is the finish line.
Moving right along to Section 2, defining scope and boundaries. First things first, is this workflow actually authorized? Before you add any automation to your Celery workers, you absolutely have to check your scope. Are you automating an application you own? Is it a client-authorized workflow? Or maybe approved internal QA monitoring? This kind of automation should only be built in owned, client-authorized, or contractually permitted environments. If your scope is even a little bit unclear, stop right there. Do not build any more automation.
Okay, so once you're authorized, you need to strictly define your Celery task boundaries. Decide exactly what that worker is responsible for. I mean, does it just submit the request? Does it pull for the token? Does it apply it? And does it stick around to confirm the downstream workflow actually succeeded? Defining these 4 isolated steps makes debugging so much easier when a component inevitably fails.
Which brings us to Section 3, managing sessions and polling. You've got to validate your inputs before queuing up the task. Seriously, do not try to guess these values. You need to inspect the live page and confirm the exact CAPTCHA type, the site key, the page URL, the action value, and any proxy settings before that task ever hits Redis. If you let bad inputs slip into the queue, you're basically creating these incredibly confusing false debugging trails for yourself later on when your workers are running silently in the background.
Now listen closely, because session context is the single most common cause of post-solved rejection. A solved CAPTCHA token is intimately tied to the specific browser context, HTTP client, cookie jar, user agent, or IP that triggered the challenge in the first place. If your challenge is triggered in one session, but your Celery worker submits the token using a completely different session context, it's going to get rejected. No exceptions. The triggering session and the submission session must be identical. Next up, you have to control your polling. A lot of APIs use a submit and poll process. The worker submits the task, waits, and checks back. But you can't just let a worker wait forever. Over-polling adds noise, and under-polling drags everything down. So follow these exact rules. Wait 15 seconds before the very first poll. Then poll every 5 seconds. And finally, enforce a hard timeout cap of 120 seconds per task. A task without a timeout is just going to eat up your resources and eventually gridlock your entire Redis queue.
All right, Section 4, controlling retries and logs.
3. That is your maximum recommended retry budget. Look, Celery retries are incredibly powerful, but they are a massive trap because they can so easily hide real underlying defects. Don't just retry everything. Sure, temporary not ready responses might be normal. But if you're hitting invalid keys, missing parameters, or zero balance errors, retrying forever isn't going to magically fix them. It's just going to burn straight through your balance. So cap your retries at 3 attempts and use exponential backoff for the timing.
When terminal failures do happen, you need to recognize them right away. Getting an error_wrong user key? Check your account or look for stray white space. Error 0 balance? Go top up your account. What about bad parameters or an error_page URL? Go back and revalidate your inputs against the live HTML. These kinds of terminal failures should trigger immediate alerts for your team, not endless money-burning retry loops.
To actually spot these errors, your operational logs need to be precise. Vague logs like CAPTCHA failed or worker error literally tell you nothing useful. You should be logging the task name, the CAPTCHA method, the attempt count, polling duration, API response category, timeout status, and the downstream status. But, and this is a massive security warning, folks, do not log your API keys, raw tokens, credentials, or any sensitive user data. You want to aid debugging, not create a glaring security vulnerability.
And finally, Section 5, Measuring True Workflow Success.
You really need to wire specific key performance indicators directly into your dashboards. For first solve latency, your P50 should be under 25 seconds for tokens. As for your solver success rate, you're aiming for 95% or higher. But remember our golden rule from earlier. Solver success isn't enough. End-to-end acceptance, which means the downstream system actually accepted your token and did its job, must also hit that 95% mark.
Because honestly, solve volume alone is just a vanity metric. Think about it. If your total solve requests are shooting up, but your downstream accepted workflows are just staying flat, you've got an expanding gap. And that gap is a massive red flag. It means you're dealing with a retry storm, bad input loops, or a session mismatch that is quietly destroying your system's efficiency and driving your cost per accepted completion right through the roof.
So let's do a rapid-fire summary of the critical do-nots to make sure your workflow actually decreases that cost per accepted solve. Ready? Do not treat the token as the finish line. Do not let Celery retry every single error. Do not lose your session context between the original request and the worker. Do not poll without a hard timeout. And whatever you do, do not track solver success without also tracking your actual workflow acceptance.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. If your solve requests are increasing, but your completed workflows are not, are you actually automating success, or are you just burning your balance? I highly recommend you take a hard look at your automated workflows today. Audit those acceptance rates and start investigating those persistent failures instead of just letting Celery repeat them endlessly. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy automating.